everybody, this is Travis. Welcome to Tpull's Corner, and today we're doing something a little different. We're going to do a tour of the arena. Specifically, we're going to play a bot match and show you all the different zones that are in Magic the Gathering now. And we're going to do this because they've introduced a bit more to the play space than there used to be. So we've got this particular mono-white deck, which has just about every card type and every type of spell mechanic that takes you into those places, like Venture, Foretell. There's a Foretell card, Disturb, Flashback, and the Learn Lesson thing from Strixhaven. So the deck list is below, and let's go right into the bot match. And we will choose the Arena Tour deck. I did test this against a live player, and it won, so not a good deck, but we didn't really make it to go fight in the open. We just did it as a test case, full of examples. Sparky's the AI, and they're going to pipe up.
I'm your Spark. Let me show you just what you're capable of.
So if you're brand new to online card games, there are a few out there. The other one most popular is Hearthstone, that has a duplicate kind of setup environment type thing. I think Magic's a little bit more complicated than most of the others. You've got the battlefield, so the land goes on the battlefield. All of these different cards go in a specific space, and it's all mirror imaged with your opponent. So the lands go mirror image on the battlefield. The creatures will go up front on the battlefield, that kind of thing. We are going to Foretell first, and this is a specific place on the card table here, the digital card table. And if you're brand new, here's the basics. You have your deck of cards, right? You draw your cards into your hand. Everybody's familiar with your deck of cards in your hand, whether you're playing hard copy tabletop games or digital online. Over here is where we'll have our discard pile, which for us is called the graveyard. And sometimes you can't get into the discard pile again in some card games. In this game, you can. You can get into your library, although right now we can't see any specific thing that's in it. But we can see that we've got 50 cards in there. We've got 7 cards in our hand.
To take your time.
And we've got 1 card in exile. This swirly thing that our opponent doesn't have yet, that's where Foretell resides, foretold cards. So we paid 2 to put it in Foretell. It's like putting it like a magical pocket dimension. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce Venture into the Dungeon. This is from one of the relatively newer expansions. I guess not anymore. We've had a couple since, but Adventures in the Forgotten Realms introduced this dungeon mechanic. And I got to tell you about a bug here as we do it as well. But the reason I'm doing this is against Sparky as a bot match.
Oh, sorry. Thought I saw something.
Although sometimes she feels necessary to chime in. Is we don't want to irritate a live opponent and cause the roping and timeout and stuff like that. So we need a little bit of time to talk. So we're up against Sparky today. And what Venture into the Dungeon did is, since it's from the realm of Forgotten Realms, we're big on the mechanics of that particular expansion are playing dragons, rolling the dice, venturing into dungeons. And there are 3 dungeons that they give you to choose from, and they choose to represent it on the battlefield with an emblem, which we're used to seeing if you've been playing the game before with Planeswalker emblems and those types of things. So they decided to create this new space with the dungeons. So we're going to put him out onto the field, and that's called Enter the Battlefield, ETB effects. And we've got 3 different choices to make here. Short dungeon, medium dungeon, long dungeon. They all have these different choices, different things that you can get for each time you venture into them. Once you choose, you're locked into one particular dungeon for that thing until you get to the very end. Then you can always, if you have more cards that allow you to venture into the dungeon, you can go on to choose the same dungeon all over again and do it all again. Or you could go do a second one. The bug I have to warn you about, and this is important, up here on the right you can go to View Battlefield. Don't do that for this, okay? Because then when you come back to it, these choices won't be there anymore. You won't be allowed to proceed. You'll either have to time out or just hit the concede button and lose the match. So once you get to this point, it's a known bug. It's been going on for more than 6 months.
I win. But I hope you win too.
I will probably post a video soon after this that showcases the bug in action. But just trust me for now. Once you get to this point, go ahead and make your choice. So we're going to make the longer choice, because when we get down here to exile the top 2 cards of your library, I want to play that if we can get to it in this match. So there's the emblem, and it shows you And your opponent can look this up and see it too, so we can see the choice that you made and what's ahead. This guy's just whomping on us. Okay, so we've got the next card, which is coming out of the Strixhaven expansion, which has to do with the learn mechanic, which gets you into your sideboard. So you've got your regular library. You can click on your deck of cards here, and you can see your sideboard. And we built this deck, so we added these cards to the sideboard, and you see every one of them has the same symbol on the right next to the sorcery lesson. It's the Strixhaven symbol. So we've had people who've played Magic before have had a sideboard before. We've got cards like Fae of Wishes and other cards that allow you to choose cards that you possess from outside the game. Those cards you put into your sideboard when you build the deck. So it can't get into your whole collection, right? You have to go into your collection and choose those things. So another good one is Legion Angel. And that you can put 3 other copies of Legion Angel into your sideboard. And when you summon Legion Angel, it'll bring the first one down, and then it'll access your sideboard, and you can get the other cards. So what Magic did for the Strixhaven expansion is they created the Learn Lesson mechanic. And whenever a card is played with the Learn, you can go choose a lesson. So we're going to play it. And for us mentally, we kind of think of the sideboard as being up and to the right because that's where we tend to be when we're creating our decks. But for now, I guess we will just go... Should we bother to go get land? Yeah, let's just go get land. Okay, we haven't played our own land yet. So then we can play the lesson we just got, the sorcery. This allows us to search our library, so it pops up. And something interesting about how you can see the information in here, right? If we view the battlefield, it's waiting for us to make our choice. But it actually shows us the next card in our library that we would have drawn. And when you open this up, it's made transparent the current order of the deck. And you see there's no lands coming up anytime soon. So it's probably good that we went to get the extra land. They're kind of grouped up later. This is actually how you can see how your deck was shuffled. And the order that you would normally get your cards in if you hadn't cast this spell. But when you go to view the browser and the spell that you're casting right now, all the cards that are illegitimate for you to grab, they're shoved in the back and grouped together in the same copies, not in the order that the deck is dealt. What it does is when you cast a spell, it tries to help you out, and it puts the spells that are legitimate for you to grab, the cards or spells that are legitimate for you to grab with that spell up front. So we grab the land, it goes into our hand. We're not going to attack with the 0 creature. He's just going to keep flying over our head and hitting us. Okay, so now we've got some cards in our graveyards. We got our library. The numbers change here. We've only got 47 cards left in our library, only 6 cards in our hand, 1 in the graveyard, and this Foretold card over here on the right in our Exile. He's got nothing yet. He hasn't lost anything. Nothing's gone into his graveyard. One of the interesting things is watch the Godsaw Guardian card disappear on the right when I go to check my Exile pile. See, it just sort of shows that it grabs it and pulls it up into the center. And this is everything that's in our Exile dimension right now. So we're going to get rid of one of these pesky flyers. We're going to cast an enchantment and exile one of their creatures. The 2/2 flyer. We choose it. Now they notice they have a swirly thing just like we do. What's in there? The card we just exiled. Now, on some cards, when they go into exile, you can't get them back. The Foretold card we can, as long as we have enough mana to cast it, so we just need 4 free lands. This card, the enemy can get it back if he has something that destroys enchantments. So, although it is in exile, it is recoverable. Notice that these are slightly different mechanics, right? This is exile from an enchantment spell. This is purposeful exile as we foretell it. They both create cards in the exile piles, respectively. But we can get them back. Okay, that's all we're going to do for now. Doesn't do any good to attack. He's got a 5 toughness blocker, so we can't get through with our professor. He's going to take her out of the picture anyway. Keep flying over ahead. And we're flooding out with land now. Great. Okay, so we can have a little bit of fun, right? We could destroy that target enchantment, but I'm just going to pass. Someday we should get something besides land. Hopefully in the next 13 cards are not all lands. Okay, Ambitious Farmhand. We'll play her. She lets us search our library for land. We choose if we want to do it. We get the land. This has the eyeball, which shows that the opponent sees what we got. So they don't know that we have these lands. They do know we have this one. So we play the one with the information that they know they have. In the meantime, she's got the Covenant ability, Transform Ambitious Farmhand, if we have 3 or more creatures with different powers. 0, 1, 2. We have the mana. We will transform her now from a 1/1 into a 3/3 with lifelink. And that'll be cool because now we can gain back everything they're taking from us. And we can make the game last as long as we need it to for demonstration purposes. They'll hit us with the 2 flyers. Aha! Another symbology. Okay. Bring her down. And let's go ahead and scry. Scry lets us look through our library and draw a card. So we scry, it brings up the top 2. Here's the 3rd card. We don't need another land right now. We'll put that at the bottom. And then we get Elite Spellbinder, which is perfect for a couple of reasons. If they keep a land and don't use it, we're going to hold on to that in the meantime. But now the library is a little bit different now because we just threw a land at the bottom. And it wasn't at random. So we actually get to see that. That information is shown to us still. Notice that it's private information. Our opponent can no longer see that. Well, he couldn't see it in the beginning because we were scrying. Only we had eyes on the library, our library. He did not. But the arena makes it available so we can always see where that land is unless we shuffle the deck again. We can also go here and see what cards are left in our sideboard anytime we want. So, I think that's all we want to do for now, except we are going to attack. They'll block. We get 3 life back, so we're gaining a life against their 2 flyers. Uh-oh. We're going to lose stuff again. Is that another flyer? Gee whiz. He's 4. I don't want to block with that, so we'll chump block. Okay, what do we want to do? He's got a power of 6. Okay, I will cast Homestead Courage on my Cathar. Now notice we just opened up kind of another area of the display, right? This is a graveyard card because it has flashback mechanic. You can cast this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost. It turns out to be the same as the regular casting cost. But when we go to check out our graveyard, there it is. And it's highlighted in blue, which shows that it's still available for us to cast, whereas these others we can't.
Good over there?
And you notice when we go to check our graveyard, it brings the cards up. It brings Homestead Courage up, and it brings the ones in the graveyard up. So all of these are cards in the graveyard. So we just wanted to show the new players that aren't quite used to all of this just yet. You've got all these zones. You've got the library, you got the graveyard, you got Exile, you've got the dungeon zone, right? You've got the sideboard, which we think of as being up off to the right. You've got your hand, and you've got these other 2 areas which represent graveyard again that's castable and Exile that's castable. So we've got all these different zones, and again they're all mirrored over here. And everything has a place. Notice the lands always go the same place, the creatures always go in the same place, the enchantments always go in the same place. Same artifacts will go here too. Okay, these guys can kill her. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll bring down Elite Spellbinder. They have nothing in their hand, so he can't use his ability to exile anything. But I'll use him as a blocker, and I'll put Cathar, I'll make her a 5/5. And they can kill her with the flyers if they want to. But I'm getting low on health. So, he's willing to sacrifice 2, just get rid of her. And I got 1 chump blocker against these guys. A wall. Attacking with the 0 creatures. Okay, I'll block and lose my 3/1 to their 1/1. Aha! Faithbound Judge is a flyer! Flying Defender! Perfect. In the meantime, I can also bring out Sungold Sentinel now. Whenever she enters the battlefield, you get to exile 1 target card from a graveyard. This particular deck, I'm not worried, but you know, in case they have a net resurrection spell or something, let's exile that one. Now they've got 2 cards in exile. You notice they look like they come from different places. Whoop! The Cloudkin Seer, which he can't get back, and the Warden of Devil's Isle, which is under here, under exile, which he can still get back. So one thing that is important for newer players to know is that exile is used a lot for different reasons. It's sort of like a pocket dimension involved with magic, but different mechanics are able to access that area in different ways. And you have to have the right spell to get your spells or your creatures back, and if not, it's inaccessible to you. Let's see, no attacks, end the turn. They know that they can't get past my 4/4 Flying Defender now, so they're too smart to attack. Land. Ooh, a +1. Aha! Nadar, Selfless Paladin. Enters into the battlefield, we get to venture into the dungeon. Now we don't have the choice of the dungeon, we just have this one path and one choice for this time. We get to scry our deck. We'll take that Homestead Courage. We'll pass. They get to scry. They're building up a little army there, aren't they? Still don't want to attack with anyone. Okay, my Faithbound Judge can attack now, so we'll use Homestead Courage on him. In the meantime, I can get Hexproof from that color. Let's see, can't be blocked by creatures of that color. So I'll activate. I'm going to choose blue. And she has Hexproof from blue now. And we'll go attack with the Faithbound Judge and the Sun Gold Sentinel. And we get to exile another card from the graveyard. So if you're a new player and you're going up against decks and you find people that have a lot of spells that dig into the graveyard, consider using Sun Gold Sentinel. You can get rid of some of their ammo. What? They did not block us at all. Which means we're probably close to winning. Aha! Portable Hole. Let's see. Portable Hole can exile opponent's permanents with mana value 2 or less. So we can get rid of their flyer, we can get rid of their wall, and we can get rid of their shaman. Let's go ahead and get rid of the 0/4 wall. Oh, sorry, Sparky. Okay, just like Borrowed Time, it puts it in exile here. So it shows up in my opponent's exile. See, the Wall of Runes is right there with the Warden. There are 2 different types of spells, right? There's an enchantment and an artifact, but I wanted to show you that enchantments and artifacts are really close to each other. There's a very thin dividing line between them. So they occupy generally the same battlefield space.
Let's get moving.
Oh, like you've got somewhere to be? Come on. All right, so we got our hand. We got the graveyard represented. We got the exile represented. We're basically showing almost every aspect of every zone except for Planeswalkers. So I've got one Planeswalker in here. We're just going to keep the planes. We'll hold on to it. I can do stuff like this. I can activate the ability just like I did the other turn. Make a blue. Go ahead and have her attack. They can't stop her. Exile the last card from the graveyard. And we could just win that way. But we want to find the Planeswalker and put it out. Hopefully it's not on the bottom of the deck. They get a flyer back. Okay. This is cool. We're going to foretell it. That's from the Call Time expansion. And now we have 2 cards in our exile pile, plus the flashback one that we cast. We cast once. Oh no, sorry. Make sure I don't misspeak. This one is the one that's in our graveyard that we can still access. We have one that we cast twice. It's exiled now because we cast it twice and we can't get it back. Two different copies of Homestead Courage.
You can do this.
When you do flashback a second time, you remove it from your graveyard and it gets exiled. That's the way the mechanic works to make sure you can't keep casting it from your graveyard, right? It can't stay in the graveyard. So if it casts once, represented in the graveyard, cast twice, exile pile, but you can't access it like you can these. We will pass the turn. And we're getting a bunch of lands. Now let's see, I could attack with Nadar, but they'd probably block him and kill him. Let's Let's wait and see if we can thin the herd a little bit. Maybe I'll sacrifice somebody else. Aha! Okay, that's to a target tapped creature. That will come in handy later. Do I have anybody I want to bring back yet? I could bring back Symbology. Okay, so we're going to cast one of our Foretold cards. Shepard of the Cosmos. We get to return a target permanent card with mana value 2 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield.
Oh.
Now, these are cards that weren't previously accessible, but we can get a couple of them now. We'll get Professor, bring her straight to the battlefield, access the sideboard, and get Introduction to Annihilation. And we'll get rid of their most powerful card.
Aww.
So now we exile that, they get to draw a card. And you notice here, that's in the exile pile and they can't get access to it. Alright. Next. No attacks. We could have foretold this. Chaplain of Alms. Oh, good. We're gonna end up killing him soon. Let's see. Do we want to do anything else? No, that's good for that turn. They can't really attack us right now, and we're gonna start attacking with our flyers. Or they're gonna attack. Okay, so we'll just use Iron Verdict. Deal 5 damage to target tapped creature. Say goodbye. Okay, Symbology. And notice what a lot of Magic is what some of the fun is when you start to learn how to go from zone to zone. So, for example, we went from the library, we drew into our hand, we played the Professor Symbology, we got into our sideboard, and we got the Exile card, and we used it to shove one of their cards into the Exile zone. I'm sorry, Sparky's getting bored. Okay, so we're going to hold on to that for, let's see, 3... No, we can play that. Let's see. Reduce to memory. Let's reduce one of their armored turtles. The enchanted one. That gave it a 3/2 token. Next, we're going to fly over with our Faithbound Judge. They should feel compelled to chump block it with gold at this point. Oh, unsummon. Nicely done. Who else are they going to unsummon? Shepard of the Cosmos. Wow. Okay, well, that kind of works for me. I can put him back down again, so he's still a good blocker. And we will foretell this card again. And end the turn. Flyer. You're gonna die. That was weird. Okay, we'll just keep filling up our hand a little bit, and we're gonna commit suicide here a little bit with some of our creatures. They're gonna lose at least one creature though. Okay, so they made space. This is in the graveyard, remember. It's represented in the graveyard. So we got Homestead Courage and Chaplain of Alms. And there's the Chaplain, and our Homestead Courage copy is back here. They're in order of when they went into the graveyard. But even though they're different mechanics, these are both cards that can be cast from the graveyard. The Flashback mechanic or the Disturb mechanic. The difference between them is Disturb's usually used with creatures or enchantments, permanents, right? Flashback's usually used with sorcerers or instants, which are temporary spells. So Flashback, you can just cast it again, it goes into exile. With something like a Disturb card that has a creature, you put it onto the battlefield. If it gets killed again, or anything that would send it into the graveyard a second time, or this new creature that it is, then you exile it instead.
Before you can planes run.
So again, just ways the mechanics work so that you can get them from the graveyard, but you can't keep reusing them. You can reuse them once, and then it goes into exile. And let's see. Do we need to do anything else? Not right this second. again. Is that our fourth one? Professor of Symbology? Okay, so we'll go ahead and do this. We will put 2 counters on Nadar so he can't be killed. They don't have enough toughness. And then we'll send him over. And when he attacks, we get to venture into the dungeon. We'll create a treasure token. Token is an artifact, so it goes right next to the other artifact. We have the portable hole. They're going to take the 5 damage. Poor baby. Aha! Planeswalker. Okay, Planeswalker comes out. And notice we're kind of full up on the battlefield, right?
The weak from the wicked.
So they shoved everything over to the left to make room for them. So we've got the lands, we've got our creatures, enchantments and artifacts, and then the Planeswalker goes on the right. And we can tell it, you know what, you can't attack or block.
No peace, my enemy.
Okay, here we can exile another target card from a graveyard. I'm going to sort of hurt myself. I'm going to exile the flashback. And again, this is for new players. We're going to exile target card from graveyard. The default's to the opponent's graveyard, but you can choose your graveyard here on the left. And then I go look for the Homestead Courage and watch it disappear. Foomp. It went from the graveyard pile into exile. And not the Foretell exile that's accessible. It went into exile where I can't get it back. So, that's how that looks. Next, we'll see if they block or if they're willing to just die. But we get to look deeper into our deck. We don't need that. We could use that. They should block. There we go. And we could have won a long time ago, but I wanted to show you all the zones. It took us a while to get to the Planeswalker zone, so the Planeswalker could be represented. Let's go ahead and put that on her. We get into our Strixhaven Sideboard one more time. We'll create a creature with flying. We'll attack with just one. We need to give them some... Here we go. Exile the top 2 cards of your libraries. You may play them. So... You see them take the cards from our library into exile. We can... They're the same cards. I can play that one. Auto pay. Cast a land. And we're going to play that one too. They both have the learn capability. Enchantments with the learn. So the first one activates and we choose the last card from our Strixhaven sideboard. That goes into our hand. Now you see we're out of cards in our Strixhaven sideboard. We have nothing in the sideboard. So if we want, we can select a card to discard and draw another card because we have no lesson cards in our sideboard. You can decline if you don't want to do anything, but I've got a spare land, so I select it and submit one. And that's what you can do if you have no sideboard and you have to go in there, or you know, you've used all your sideboard cards. We'll pass the turn. They get another chump blocker. Uh-oh. Here's another one. Oh, we can tap creatures and win. Let's do this. Make it so you can't attack or block.
I shall not let you
We'll go ahead and use this to tap those 2. Again, we can select a card to discard and draw, get through our deck a little bit more. And it's another land. Whoop-de-doo. Okay, and then we'll just pass the turn. Get a flyer. Okay. 0/5 doesn't matter. We're not going to bother to block it. We'll go ahead and tell this guy he can't attack or block. Okay, Beloved Baker. Baker can go out on the ground. Kindly Ancestor could go off on the ground. We'll cast the Disturb now. Chaplain of Alms. Now that gives every one of them ward, so they can't cast spells without paying an extra mana. But now you see this one is no longer the first Chaplain of Alms. We paid the Disturb cost, so now it's Chapel Shieldgeist over on the right. And if it would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead. Now we have an army, they have an army. They're going to fly and attack. I don't know why. They know I can kill it. Flashback. Doesn't matter. Give it to our cloister guy. Okay, let's go ahead and make sure he can't attack or block, and then we'll
consider the evil within yourself.
So we got 7 loyalty counters on Grandmaster of Flowers, so now he becomes a creature. He's an indestructible flying creature. He could actually attack this turn if we wanted him to. But you notice that the Planeswalker in him disappeared, so we had all this room, so it strengthened everything out, and now we get creatures all across the entire battlefield. We've got the enchantments and artifacts commingled over on the right in the order in which they were played, and we've still got our hand, graveyard, and exile represented, as long as our deck, our graveyard, and our exile pile there. We still got the dungeon emblem up, and that shows us just about every single zone there is finally. And so I'm going to attack with Nadar. He's going to get all these effects. And we get to scry, look into our deck. We don't need the lands, we don't care about the lands. We do like that. They should block with somebody. And we're getting near the end of our demonstration. I just want to show you what happens when you complete a dungeon and start a new one. I'll block with a 1/3 maybe? Oh, here, I'll block with Kindly Ancestor. That'll give me life. Thank you. Okay, Cloister Gargoyle, we venture into the dungeon. Play the last part of the first dungeon. Draw 3 cards and reveal them. You can cast one of them without its mana cost. Let's go ahead and cast Circle of Confinement. Exile one of his cards. Just like the other two, it'll be here in the exile represented. He could get it back if he could break enchantments. We can put that creature down. And we can attack with Nadar. And we get to choose dungeons again. And we could do that one all over again. Let's go do the short one instead. He's ready to die. He's ready to go to his maker. And then that's everything. Alright, so we'll just go ahead and finish the game off and end it. Get all these lovely effects. Exile another card thanks to Sun Gold. Give powers to these guys. You'll notice the Cloister Gargoyles are now flying +3 because they completed the dungeon. We'll target our indestructible flying dragon creature. And we'll go into here. I'll discard a land. And we go from 14 to 1. Oh, first strike, he's dead.
Nice
Never mind.
job.
All right. No big deal. You'll have a copy of this in the text down below for the YouTube video. If you want to play around with the deck, go ahead. Take it out, play against regular players. It's not a bad deck overall. But just wanted to go over all of these different zones that we have. Make sure you know the bug about venturing into the dungeon. To make sure you choose not to view the battlefield or try and switch between the browser and the battlefield when you venture into the dungeon the first time, because that bug is not fixed yet and that will mess you up. But other than that, what should I say about this? I should say that Magic the Gathering has gotten a little more complicated because they keep putting in more of these zones. So we're stuck with, I shouldn't say stuck with, but the current rotation of cards has the expansion Zendikar Rising. Then they introduced Kaldheim, which gave us the Foretell feature, right? Then they gave us Strixhaven after Kaldheim, which introduced the sideboard, which ours is now empty. And then, right after that, they gave Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, which gave us the dungeons over here with the 3 different choices, the 3 different dungeons. And a lot of people kind of got consternated at this point because Foretell wasn't a big stretch, and we were used to sideboards to a certain degree. So that wasn't too bad. But there were a lot of longtime players that were kind of put off at first by the idea of having 3 different dungeons from which to choose and having all these different paths and introducing all these new choices into the game. They figured it would slow things down a bit. And if you face somebody who does have a venture into the dungeon deck, their speed in choosing varies, so you could be in for a much longer match if you're facing somebody who has cards that do nothing but venture into the dungeon time and time again. That can be a long, tedious match. But for those of us that have been playing for a while, it was surprisingly easy for us to incorporate this new chunk into the game and factor it into our calculations. And we sort of look at the 3 different dungeons that we have, and we kind of know going into the battles which one we would want to do, and if we encounter a changing condition by our opponent's deck, we know which one to switch over to if we think that would serve us better, that kind of thing. So you just need to get familiar with it. Don't be intimidated if you're a brand new player and you find it hard to keep track of all of these things. Know that right after Kaldheim and Strixhaven, the idea of introducing yet another play space into the zones for us to take into consideration, it also caused us to pause a little bit at first, but we did get used to it. And then, of course, we've had the latest 2 expansions, Innistrad Midnight Hunt and Innistrad Crimson Vow, which introduced the Disturbance flashback stuff, which plays around with the graveyard pile as well. And so, between all of these latest expansions, when you add them all up, we are fully utilizing the entire digital play space here in every zone. And this deck that I put together just represents the full use out of all of those, and being able to go from one to the other, right? So we could draw from our library into our hand, we could venture into the dungeon and exile cards, and from the exile stack cast those. It might be a Strixhaven card that we cast from Exile that then takes us into our Strixhaven sideboard. So we can really go from zone to zone to zone once you know how the cards work and interplay with each other. And there's really no barriers. It can get really kind of fun and exciting the more you master these and the more you play around with it. So if you're new, again, don't be intimidated. You don't have to put all of these in your deck at the very start. You can just choose one mechanic and get used to it and switch just back and forth between like graveyard and exile or something. And then, add venture into the dungeon later, that kind of thing. Go at your own speed. But we just want to encourage new players to understand the play space, to understand the different zones, understand how you can and cannot travel between them, and that sort of thing. So, this is Travis from Tpull's Corner. I'll leave you here with that. Like and subscribe to the video. Share it with a new friend who's new to the game, who maybe could use some instruction and maybe got overloaded the first time you tried to show them everything all at once. All right, we'll leave it there. Have a good one.